Hey everyone, welcome to episode 87 of the Sarah's podcast. I'm your host, Stelios. In this episode, I talked to the chef Mark Greenaway. In 2013, Mark was awarded 3 AA rosettes for culinary excellence. Mark's drive puts him at the top tier of Scottish chefs. His eponymous restaurant opened in Edinburgh in 2013 and won him numerous culinary awards. It was ranked 13th on Square Meal's list of top 100 UK restaurants in 2016 and was the highest ranked Scottish restaurant in 2017. Mark's latest venture, Grazing by Mark Greenaway, opened in Edinburgh's Waldorf Astoria in 2019. Its key aim was for customers to enjoy their dining experience in a leisurely, relaxed manner. His passion for Scottish ingredients means he only uses the very best local seasonal produce. At the moment, like many restaurants, they're closed. But if you do fancy a treat, you could get a meal box from the restaurant delivered to your door. Just visit markgreenaway.com. Mark is also excited to announce the opening of his new takeaway concept in London, Greenaways Pie and Mash, opening on the 12th of April. Mark is bringing back together the long-forgotten London tradition of the pie shop with a selection of amazingly, meticulously made pastry wonders. With the number of pie shops in London dwindling, I can't even say that word. There used to be 110 and now there's barely 20. Mark saw an opportunity to bring back a classic to the capital. From this, Mark Greenaway's Pie and Mash shop was born. Talking to Mark, I got to learn the difference between making a Scotch pastry and a normal short crust. I can't wait for the restrictions to end so I can go down to London and grab myself a pie. A few Sarah's updates. We caught up with Darren Wild from Catch 32 in Bakewell in Derbyshire, perhaps best known for its unique and delicious Bakewell tart. Bakewell has many more tempting treats to offer, including Darren's great fish and chips. That was until he had a scrap fire. In the article, we'll learn about dealing with an insurance company, being open for only a few months, and then the fire, and then COVID coming all at the same time. We have also written a great little article on the super deduction announced in the budget announcement a couple of weeks ago. If you have been considering upgrading your kit, then go ahead and read this article first. You'd be crazy not to invest in capital equipment now and reap the rewards at the end of your tax year. Also, in this month's email, you will find a discount code for 20% off Sarah's potato preparation, so you may as well get on our online store and bag yourself a bargain. Anyway, enough from me. I hope you enjoy episode 87 with Mark Greenaway. Mark Greenaway, welcome to the Sarah's podcast.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's. I was just saying to you before we started, it's the first time I've done a podcast with someone who looks like they're locked in a prison cell.
It's not a prison cell; it's a prison. It's the electrical cupboard. For all the planning I've done to be on today, the street cleaners obviously never got the memo because outside for like the last 10, 15 minutes, it's been the same street cleaner going back and forward on the piazza. Because I'm currently in Covent Garden in London. And just the noise. So I'm running about last minute trying to find somewhere to hide. So I'm in the electrical cupboard.
He obviously is just trying to do an excellent job for you outside your restaurant, clearly.
Yeah, fair play to him, It'll look lovely when he's finished. It just didn't help me when I was trying to find a quiet spot, that's all.
Shame no one can enjoy it at the moment.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
But soon, hopefully.
No doubt, I'm going to get a window cleaner, start cleaning my windows, or a low-hanging helicopter. So, it's one of those things.
Yeah, exactly. But, what can we do? We should be thankful.
Yeah, definitely. So for those that don't know you, Mark, give us a little introduction to who you are and what you do.
So Mark Greenaway, been the chef for 25 years, predominantly sort of in Scotland, in and around Edinburgh. Spent 5 years in Sydney, Australia, and then really worked sort of all over the world. So Singapore, Tokyo, America, just either doing one-off events or weekly dinners or, that sort of thing. And then for the last couple of years, I've been doing some consultancy in London for a few different brands. And then this year, I open up 2 ventures in the next sort of 6 months in London. And I've currently got a restaurant in Edinburgh within the Waldorf Astoria or in Edinburgh. So, I mean, obviously at the moment, everything's closed, but, it will open back up. Everything will open back up. So just sort of charging ahead, and, what this time has given me is really time to plan and prepare like never before, I suppose. Which we've sort of tried to treat like a luxury, which sounds terrible because of what's going on in the world, but it's not very often you do get given this time to sit back, reflect, and think, right, what are we doing with the business? What are we doing for the next 5 years as a brand? Because as much as I like it or not, my business has to become a brand. For it to grow, it can't just be one restaurant in Edinburgh. That's not, more than anything, one restaurant in Edinburgh is not going to pay a retirement. It's just not. And no chef, thinks that. So at some stage, you have to think, okay, how else, can we future-proof the business? I mean, look at what the whole country's just gone through. The whole world's just gone through, never mind our industry, but every industry. But how as a chef do you try and future-proof that? I mean, not that this is ever likely to happen again, but we might as well try and use it as a positive or to our advantage, I suppose.
In your 25 years, give or take, have you known anything similar to this? What's the biggest crisis you've seen, whether it was personally or sort of like on a big scale like this?
Nothing. I mean, I think even 2008 with the recession, I don't want to be rude, but I never really noticed the recession. So, when the recession happened in 2008, I was an employee. I was head chef. I was still getting my wages every week. I never really noticed a recession. I don't live a lavish lifestyle anyway. We had just bought an apartment in Glasgow the year before, but we had no plan to sell it. We had no plan to, so the housing crash, it never affected us. We rented out the apartment, moved through to Edinburgh, and if anything, it gave us cheaper rents in Edinburgh than, So I've never experienced, as like most people, anything ever like this. It's madness. What it's done to the industry is unfathomable. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's I suppose, and in some ways in Scotland it's been worse for longer because the severity of the close downs have just been a lot bigger than what they have in the UK, at least in England, shall I say. There has been some reopenings in the UK, England in between, but in Scotland they've been pretty severe lockdowns for quite a while.
Yeah, I mean the rules, and I understand why rules are different in different areas because the R number's different and all this sort of thing. So the rules have been completely different in Scotland and England. And I've almost stopped looking at the rules in Scotland because I'm in London at the moment. So what used to happen pre-pandemic is I would travel to London for 4 days, then travel back to Edinburgh for 3 days. Then the following week I would spend 4 days in Edinburgh, then come back to London for 3 days. So I would spend half a week in one city and half a week in the other. Up until February, March. And then for the first 3 months of lockdown last year, I was just in Edinburgh. Everything was locked down, obviously the whole country. And then I started coming back to London again. But because my restaurant was still closed in Scotland, on a month-by-month basis. And then I was meant to go home in December, just for 2 weeks, got COVID, so couldn't travel, obviously. Because my restaurant's still closed, I've not been back since yet. So I've not been back to Scotland since November, which for me is crazy because I'm used to living out of a suitcase on a train. But because I got COVID, I couldn't obviously travel, so I couldn't go home.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was very lucky. It just felt like a cold for me. It wasn't.
You were all right.
Absolutely. I mean, I thought it was a cold, and it was only because I was going to travel. I got a test because I had none of the symptoms. I had a bit of a cough, a runny nose, and a bit of a sore throat, but not a continuous cough, not a fever. I had no classic symptoms,
Yeah.
and it was only because we were going to travel. I thought I'll get a test just in case, and it came back I'd had COVID.
Wow.
So I was quite lucky. It was, yeah, I was very lucky. In fact, it was.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, one thing you've not done, like, is try and, like, I see this a lot, is that everyone likes to say, oh, it's a shit show, government this, government that, one government does better than the other. And you're not saying none of that. It's just, you've got to separate the fact that it was different in Scotland to what it was in England because of the R rate.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to know, that I think every government is trying to do what they can. I think that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the government, they're not waking up in the morning and thinking, right, how can we make people less money?
Yeah.
I mean, I think they want to get it open quicker than we do, because at the moment they're the one bailing everyone out. And I'm not sticking up for the government in any way, but I mean, I suppose I am. It's hindsight's a great thing, and to look back and think, well, they should never have done this. That was ridiculous, or that's easy. I mean, we can all do that even with our own lives.
Yeah, I think a lot of people generally are quick to say, oh, well, they don't know what they're doing, and I think it's this armchair expertism now, isn't it? And I think
we're all experts, aren't we?
Yeah. The other day, it was Saturday. I think it was Saturday. I just deleted all the social media apps off my phone. I just got to the point where it was just so much toxicity going on, whether it's Twitter or whatever. And I just thought, you know what, and we're addicted. Whatever you say, we are addicted. We're hooked to going back and looking at that. And then you start to feel crap when you read that, this was this and this was that. And I just deleted it. I just thought, can't be doing with it. I log in through my laptop if I need to do work, and that's it. And so far, I feel better for it, but I'm probably still in the honeymoon. Yeah, I'm still in the honeymoon phase. There's no doubt. Like, I know that in a week's time, I'm going to be sitting down and bored, and I want to go through it. But don't get me wrong. I had a quick look today when I was on my laptop doing some social media for the business. But yeah, I just feel like it's just this constant. I do feel like the media is just constantly whipping everyone against each other, whether it was Brexit and now it's COVID, and or whether it's the royal family, or whether it's, I don't know, the lady that got murdered. Like, it's just constant. It's just a constant barrage of the media putting everyone's feelings against each other. And I just thought, I can't be doing it no more.
Yeah, I mean, I use social media, and I always have used social media more as a business tool than a personal tool. Yeah. I mean, I don't wake up in the morning and put a picture of my toast on Instagram. It's not how I use it. But I mindlessly scroll through like everyone else does and see all the toxic and stuff. But yeah, I sort of more use it for business.
I think the scary thing I found is that you'd pick up your phone, and the first thing you'd open would be like Twitter or Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah.
And even the other day, I think I was just checking how long it was going to take me to get home from where I was. So I wanted to click map. And what did I do first? I clicked on a social media icon because my brain was just automatically doing it. And I just thought, you know what, this is just not right.
It's weird. Like, if I download something, like a new app on my phone, and it moves my apps, I have to move them back in the same place. And I think that's how bad we've got it. So if my Facebook app's moved, it makes no sense to me. I'm thinking, no, that's not right. It should be top left. Next to Instagram, next to Twitter. And that's how my apps live. And it's weird because, we have programmed ourselves to fall into that habit, I suppose. Addiction.
Yeah. No, it is. We are addicted. And I was saying this to a friend the other day, like, we're addicted and they want us to be addictive. And we all try to pretend that we're not addicted, but we are. Like, and I'm terrible at it. I don't put on Facebook, like you, what toast I had for the morning or whatever. But for me, it's strictly a business tool. And I think one of the common complaints I get is that I don't share enough. Right? And I'm thinking, what the hell? Like, again, like, it's just a strange feeling. But I just feel that there's so much noise out there that how can you even promote a business when,
Yeah.
imagine if the restaurant was open at the minute. It'd be really hard to cut through all of that noise, wouldn't it?
I mean, it is. I mean, so from Grazing in Edinburgh, which is the name of my restaurant in Edinburgh, we are doing at-home boxes from the restaurant. So one of the tools, the biggest tool we do use is social media for that.
Yeah.
And it is just about repetition, going on, uploading something, sending an image, asking for comments. And you just have to do what you can do, I suppose. It's not, how does one restaurant shout louder than the other? It's hard.
Everyone's in the same box, aren't they, really?
Yeah, I mean, everyone, a year ago, if you had said to me you're going to be doing at-home kits and you're going to be opening a pie shop, I'd probably have laughed at you. And went, no, I'm not. Why would I want to do that? Because it's just not something that any chef considers. We're all really protective over our restaurant, our food, our methods, and the thought that we're going to give that food to Joe Public to cook themselves at home would have been madness. It would have been like, no, what if they overcook it? What if they undercook it? What if they burn it? It's just not something that we would have ever considered.
Yeah. And how are the takeaway boxes doing, the home boxes?
Amazingly well. I mean, obviously we've got peaks and troughs. So, Easter is amazing. Mother's Day is amazing. We had Valentine's Day. How did I forget about that? So that week was a record-breaking week for us. It's going really well. We change the menu every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, that gives us fresh content to put out on social media, gives us fresh videos, fresh photography, something else to talk about rather than just buy the boxes. It's doing really well. I mean, I think to the extent that when the restaurant opens back up, we'll probably keep them on.
Yeah.
We'll
that's an interesting point, because do you think you'd be able to juggle both if the restaurant's back up to full capacity, all being well?
Yeah, I mean, again, we're saying full capacity, but what's full capacity going to look like? Is it going to look like 2 meters between tables? So therefore, we are only going to be doing 50% of the covers. But, if we're only doing 50% of the covers, how do we then pay for staff? Because furlough's not going to last forever.
No.
So it depends what reopening long-term looks like, because I think for the foreseeable future, it will be, 1 meter, 2 meters between tables. So if that's reopened, then we're going to have loads of capacity to do it. If reopened is go for your life, squeeze in as many covers as you can, that's a different story. But I think we're a long ways away from that at the moment.
Yeah, I do think the government, or all governments in the UK, are going to err on the side of caution, I think, somewhat.
I think, I mean, given that I've had zero medical training whatsoever, once we're all vaccinated, is that the threat gone? I don't know. I have no idea. How long is the immunity for it? Is it 5 months? Is it 12 months?
Yeah.
What happens on month 13 when everyone starts getting it again, or month 6, if immunity is only 5 months? Again, zero medical training, so I have no idea what I'm talking about, but
that would make you an expert on Facebook, though, to be fair.
Yeah, I might put that on Facebook as well. So what is reopening? None of us know. But hopefully, everyone's safe and we can all make enough money to continue on. And
I think one of the things I say, like the industry that I mostly supply, which is the fish and chip sector, they've generally had it okay. I think there was a bit of closure, like with everything else, in the first lockdown, but then after that they sort of moved quickly, got click and collect delivery going, you name it. So they've not, for the most part, had the trials and tribulations that the wider hospitality industry's had, but I do think that they're probably going to see a huge dip when all the restaurants reopen, when the pubs reopen, and I think because there's just going to be so much that people have missed. People have missed going to your restaurant. They've missed going to nice restaurants, normal restaurants. So I think people are going to, I hope they are, because it'd be good for the economy. They're going to be quick to want to go back to what made them feel pretty normal before. So I could see how some parts of the hospitality sector won't doing as well as they probably have been.
Yeah.
But I think, again, that's just got to balance out, hasn't it? It can't stay like this forever. So
No, and that's it. I mean, it going back to some sort of normality, it's going to be easier for the likes of the fish and chip shops and to pivot back to what they were doing before. Because that's, how they've made their money before, so they're going to know what to expect. But at the moment, or since this started, none of us have known what to expect. I mean, we took over a site in Covent Garden. It's the old Wahlburgers on James Street.
yeah,
And it was only meant to be a 6-month pop-up while we were working on my new restaurant, which is opening in London in, middle of June, early July now. And we were the same. We had no idea what staffing we would need. We were coming out of lockdown, so we opened in August with social distancing, but we were fortunate that we had outside tables. And it's just the unknown of, you just don't know how to staff it, how much food to buy and how much food to prep. And even come the 12th of April, when we open back up, we're only opening outside. So what happens when it rains? Do we just send the staff home? Do we close for the day? And furlough's not that flexible. You can't furlough someone for half a day.
no.
So who loses out there? Do we just pay them and send them home, or do we keep them here and hope people are willing to sit in the rain?
I think,
but it's just, we just don't know.
I think my assumption is at the moment that it's just going to be a very tricky time to be open. I think that, especially for new ventures, if you can just sort of, I'd imagine, I'm no business expert, but I imagine it's tightening the belt until offices are redone, the weather's better, because again, I bet you've seen a lot less footfall. Is there a lot less people in London? Do you see?
It's the oddest thing, because it's almost like I'm living in it's almost like I'm living in a village, but it's massive.
Yeah.
Because you walk out the front door, and on the way home, I mean, I'm lucky I live 6 minutes walk away, but on the way home at 6 o'clock at night, you might see a dozen people. It's like you're living in a village. It's just not, and I know why, because we're in lockdown. But it's just weird. It's almost like for the last 12 months, I've not been living in London. I have, but it's because it's nothing like what London is.
I was in London just before Christmas. It might have been like early December, and it just felt eerie.
Yeah,
and it was daytime. It's just like, it wasn't quite as bad as the film I Am Legend, but it just felt like for a city something was wrong.
We're opening a pie shop on Villiers Street. So it's in between Charing Cross Station and Embankment. So the walk from where we are and James Street is probably not even 10 minutes. And you walk through Covent Garden, walk through the piazza, and you're the only person there. I mean, I done a 360 video the week before last, and I was the only person on the piazza in Covent Garden.
When was that?
2 weeks ago.
And I'm just trying to think, when was that even possible before? Like maybe at 5 in, 6 in, maybe?
Yeah, but then it was dark and you couldn't really see. And by that time, you've probably drunk too much yourself. So, you're not really looking for other people. But yeah, it's the strangest thing.
So with you opening 2 locations, what have the sort of the challenges been? Shop fitters, anything like that, getting anyone in with the whole COVID thing, or has that been fairly straightforward? I
mean, for my signature restaurant, which is in London, so that's been about a year in the planning now. We went to see the site last February, but there was landlord's construction getting done first. So that landlord's construction was meant to finish October. We were meant to get keys October, fit out for 8-9 weeks, open for sort of January. That's all been pushed back. We got keys last Friday. The fit out is now a 16-week program, which we're trying to pull back to a 12-week program. It's the constant battle between contractor and tenant. So we're now looking to open middle of June, end of June, middle of July. But everything's even just getting onto site, we could only visit every second Thursday. No more than 3 of us could have gone onto site. We had to take our own PPE, so hard hat, yellow jacket, boots. They were not providing them. Obviously masks on and stuff, just because they had to make sure it was a day that the least amount of contractors were on site, because building work was still going on, but at a very reduced, builders had to work 2 meters apart, and so it just dragged everything on. Villiers Street's slightly different for the pie shop, because that's the tiniest of locations, and so we start work there end of next week. But that shop fit out's only 2 weeks, so we should be open 12th of April. So,
what made you want to do a pie shop? Like, why? Of all things, let's say.
So the original plan was I opened my signature restaurant in London. Then 6 months later, we start opening sub brands of mine. So whether that's a pie shop or maybe a sandwich shop or maybe something else, and I was tasked to come up with these brands of what I would want to open after my signature restaurant. So one of the things about London is it's always been famed for its pie, mash and liquor. And that's what it's always been. It's a very London, very English thing. And obviously when I was coming up with these 3 or 4 different concepts, a pie concept was one of them. Just because of what London's famous for. It's what tourists want when they come here. And we were always very conscious that if we were to open any sub-brands, they would be very small to start with. And they would be in locations that were heavy footfall, heavy traffic. Obviously, locations like Covent Garden come with huge rentals, or, you pay for the location. So it had to be somewhere small with low amounts of staff to run it. So, and the pie concept was one of these ideas that I had sort of put into a presentation, if you like, with all the different pies and the flavors and what we could do and how we could make it slightly different to what's already out there. And, we are never going to be a traditional London pie shop because we've not been open for 50 years. So there's no point us pretending that we are. And one of the things that we've tried to do is, even just with the packaging or the shop front, is be modern. And it's not because there's anything wrong with, a traditional London pie shop. There's not. But if you try to fake it, you're just going to get found out so quickly.
Yeah.
And we're not, a third generation pie shop. We're just not. So there's no point pretending we are. So we've deliberately gone the modern route of it. And there's nothing wrong with the traditional ones. It's just not who we are, though.
No, it's not what you do.
And you'd be found out very, very quickly. If we tried to make it look authentic in London, there's just no point trying to do that, because we're not authentically London. I'm Scottish like that. So that's just one of the sort of concepts for the sub-brands and because my signature restaurant's taken so long, it's sort of catapulted this idea before the other idea, which is fine. As I said before, we've had so much time to think about it, to plan it properly, to speak to packaging companies, manufacturers of, just designers or branding consultants or marketing people or PR companies. We've just had so much time to do it properly almost.
That makes sense. And are you making the pies on site, or you've got like another little place where you'll be making them and bringing them in?
So at the moment we're making them in James Street, where my pop-up is, where the pop-up is that we're currently working out of. But the long-term plan is to find its own unit to make the pies in. That'll then ship out to the shop.
Yeah.
Every single morning, fresh. We just have to find the ghost kitchen that we're going to do it in, or the central production kitchen that we're going to do it in. But at the moment, and for the next sort of 2 or 3 months, it's me, my chefs here in our pop-up, and we're going to be making them here ourselves. So, and then the plan is to put one of my chefs from here in charge of
that
the production kitchen, just so we've got that consistency all
Well,
the
that's
way.
it's a big thing. Consistency is a really big thing.
Yeah.
So reading up on the sort of the pie business, what's the difference between a Scotch pie pastry and a short crust pastry?
So a Scotch pie pastry shell has traditionally been dried for 3 days before you cook it. So you make, and it can be made with butter, it can be made with lard, it can be made with margarine. You make the pie shell, so the pie
Hmm.
case, and then you air dry them for 3 days
Oh,
before
really?
you then cook inside them. And what that does, it gives you such a brittle and short pastry that it holds its shape and
Okay.
doesn't go soggy really quickly. So when we were doing all the trials of pies for the pie shop, the fillings we sort of got right quite quickly. We've added some tarragon to the chicken. We added some spring onions to the lamb. We've tweaked the filling recipes along the way. But it wasn't until we went, you know what, let's try the Scotch pie pastry. Because for them to sit on a counter for an hour and a half staying hot, you don't want it to dry out. You don't want it to go soggy. You don't want to try and pick it up and the bottom falls out of it. So we found that the Scotch pie pastry lasted the best,
Mm.
straight through the whole cooking process.
So
So
it's
from
just
cooking,
so it's just dehydrating a normal pie and a normal pastry,
yeah,
essentially. Wow.
and then we obviously then fill it, put puff pastry on top, and then bake it.
Mm.
So it's sort of and we tried loads of different short crust pastry bases, puff pastry bases, flavoring the bases, and it was sort of staring at me the whole time because I'm Scottish. So, and the butcher meat that we're going to use is my butcher from Edinburgh. So all the butcher meat is coming from him. So it's although it is just a pie, the amount of thought and time that we put into this brand is crazy. Like it's just consumed so much of our time. But again, going back to what I said in the beginning, I've never had this time before.
Mm.
So it's a luxury that we've looked at probably 15, 20 shops
Wow.
until we went back to one of the original ones and put the offer in for that. So yeah, so it's a luxury to have the time, but at the same time, people are going through real hardships.
No,
So
definitely. It sort of feels you feel guilty for progressing.
yeah, I mean, I think everyone's going to progress. It's just going to take some people more time than others. I suppose
Yeah.
it's everyone's going to reopen their restaurants again, and the restaurants or the shops that aren't lucky enough to reopen, something else will open in that space.
Yeah.
It's not going to stay empty forever. One thing that is good is that landlords before, when they could demand the rent they wanted, maybe now they can't. Maybe now there's a bit more competition.
Yeah.
I mean, I know for a fact that we're looking at rentals and they're 30% lower than what they were a year ago, and that's a huge amount. When margins are where they are within the restaurant trade, if you can get rental for 30% cheaper, that's a crazy percentage.
Yeah.
So it's good for some, I suppose.
I suppose in some ways it's a good thing because it sort of resets the landlord's expectation. It's just they're obviously going to want to recoup that 30% at some point, aren't they? And that's probably a few years down the line, isn't it? But you've just got to be
Yeah,
ready. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, or they just extend their mortgages by
yeah.
30% to pay it off. I don't know. It's none of us are going to do anything for nothing.
No,
We all want something out of these things.
with this whole rent moratorium, it's all this just the rent's backing up and accruing. And do you see any solution there? Have you heard anything that's a good idea, or is it just wait and see?
I think it's just wait and see. It's impossible to know what's going to happen. How once we are open properly as of the 17th of May, are landlords going to be more forgiving? I think they're going to have to be,
Yeah,
because what's the alternative? It sits empty. And then people are going to walk into an empty unit and say, we're not giving you a premium and we'll give you 40% less rent.
yeah.
So I don't know. It's impossible to say.
I suppose they're better off getting on board and trying to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. I think, that way, if they can get on board and say, look, we can help you here. We want a long-term tenant. Let's try work together. You want a long-term landlord. Let's try make this work. And if it's that scenario, then it'll be great. But it's, if it's part of some big, I don't know, some big group of like investment funds or whatever, it's very difficult to have that conversation with that type of landlord, isn't it? I guess.
I don't know. It's not really the world I'm from. I only have the experience of what we've done in London so far. So our experience so far has been really positive.
Yeah.
Speaking to landlords, because they're almost in the same position that we are.
Yeah.
We're looking for sites, they're looking for tenants. So it sort of makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Do you see yourself doing supplying the nicer restaurant with pies as well, or do you see it as just keeping it separate?
Totally different concept.
Totally different, isn't it? Not even a fancy pie.
No, definitely not.
One thing I want to say, actually, I don't know if I'm a bit late to the party, but am I the first to make the joke that you're going to be doing a Scottish fried pie?
We're not doing fried pies. What's a fried pie?
A fried pie is a Scottish delicacy.
When you deep fry the pie?
Yeah.
We're definitely not doing that. Definitely not. Absolutely not.
Well, if you want to be traditional to Scotland, that's surely it's something. Yeah.
No.
Joking aside, I've never actually eaten one. A deep fried pie.
I mean, I must have at some stage in my life. Drunk or otherwise.
Unknowingly.
Yeah, drunk or otherwise. But it's not short on calories. So no, we're not doing deep fried pie. Definitely not.
So, can you say a little bit more about the nicer restaurant? Let's say the more exclusive one that's going to be opening in London.
Or
is it still top secret?
It is, only because it's part of a bigger marketing plan that we've got and how we're going to announce it. I mean, we're opening it, as I said, late June, early July, and trust me, I will be screaming it from the rooftops.
Yeah.
Like, it's not something I don't want to tell people about. Yeah. And I think we'll probably start. I mean, the thing is, or the challenge we've got is if you start promoting something too early,
you lose the face.
People have lost interest by the time you open it. They think you've been open for months because you've been talking about it for months.
Yeah.
And that's why it's just the only reason we mention is it sort of makes more sense of why I'm in London.
Yeah.
Because why else would Mark be in London opening a pie shop?
Yeah,
so
no, exactly.
We can't not mention it because it is happening. It's just in June or July.
How many outlets do you see yourself with in London?
Oh, I've no idea. 2. Let's get them open first.
So
no idea.
What do you sort of see? You've been in the industry a long time. You've seen a lot of sort of closures, openings. You've seen a lot of good things, bad things. What do you think are the biggest risks because of COVID moving forward? And also, whilst we're there, what do you sort of see like the biggest opportunities as well? But if we focus on the risks first,
I think one question answers the other. I think the biggest risk we've got as an industry is ourselves. So before, we were all really protective over our brand. I want to be known as a fine dining chef. I want to be known as this. Whereas in the future, I think what we're going to see is a lot of chefs diversifying into not sub-brands, because that sounds like it's subpar and it's not. And I think we've already seen it. We've already seen it with Sat Baines doing his Indian concept. I read last week that Tom Ketteridge is opening a vegan fast food place in London. So I think we've already started seeing it. And I think more chefs will do that. More chefs will open. I mean, can you imagine if Heston Blumenthal opened a fish and chip shop? Or if Gordon Ramsay opened a burger house? I mean, he has opened a burger house. But, the knowledge that these chefs have that they can put towards not fast food, not casual food, but more accessible. And I'm not talking brasserie. I'm talking, fish and chip shops, pie shops, cafes, delis, these sorts of things. And what that does is it obviously splits our revenue streams so that if something like this does happen, then we still have revenues coming in.
Yeah.
I mean, the pie shop, we've got the rota for the pie shop is 4 staff, 2 full-time, 2 part-time. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's takeaway only. There is no indoor seats.
You just couldn't do that with a restaurant. You just couldn't get nowhere close, could you?
No, not at all. You're looking at kitchen porters, cleaners. Just the costs just mount up. So I think the problem is ourselves, and the solution is ourselves. I think
so
more careful go into sub brands.
Excuse the pun, but it's just fingers in lots of pies, isn't it? It's just keeping lots of different revenue streams coming in and making sure, and as long as the profit's right, it all fixes itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think if you look at the amount of Costa's, Starbucks, Pret that won't reopen, they're ideal site sizes and ideal locations for chefs to walk in and go, do you know what? I'm going to open a pizza shop. And it's going to be the best pizza. It's going to be far better than Pizza Hut, Pizza Express combined.
Yeah.
Because once you do get to a certain size, like these guys, Pizza Express, and it's lost its individuality. So I think more chefs will be doing what I'm doing, I think.
And I think I think what's sort of happened, and I think we all go through this phase, is that when we were all sort of worried about losing our businesses, you sort of let go of ego and you start to think about survival. And then once you're surviving, you start to think about thriving. Yeah. And I think, and it's just about, like you said, you mentioned some names, but it was just like before they would probably have never considered, or yourself, doing a certain thing. And now it's like, no, yeah. And because it was, again, you tie that image up to ego, and I think it's really interesting because I follow Sat Baines when I'm on Instagram, and he's not far. He's only in Nottingham, and and look how great he's turned around that product, and he's made it fun, and it makes me want to eat it. And you think,
and you and I both know, or we can guess how big that brand's going to become.
Yeah, definitely.
That's going to become massive, whether he wants it to or not. It will, because I can guarantee the quality is second to none. It'll be outstanding. It will be. So that will grow arms, legs, be franchise, be whatever it wants to be, because it will be incredible.
I suppose
because he's one of the best chefs in the country.
And it would depend on. I suppose it just depends on what his intentions are. If he just wants to get back open to his restaurant, he's got so many other options. He doesn't have to shut the doors on that thing. He can carry on doing it on the side, but not just him. Loads of people like that. But I suppose in some ways, it's allowed everyone to be creative in different ways and do things that a lot of people might have said before. What are they playing at? Why are they doing that?
Yeah, I mean, why can't I have a food truck at a food festival in the summer? Yeah. Why not? I mean, I don't have to stand there and cook it. Whereas before, it would have been totally unthinkable.
Yeah. When I consider, sometimes I think the person that was probably early to the game on this, even well before pre-COVID, but someone like Rick Stein, I think, in Cornwall, he was doing fish and chips, another seafood thing, a very nice seafood restaurant. And it is hitting lots of different price points. And I think maybe a lot of people just sort of looked at that and thought, well, actually, that's quite good. I know of a lot of chefs that are sort of calling me and saying, "Oh, I want to get into fish and chips," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, cool, yeah, whatever, yeah." And it's interesting because I think, and it doesn't mean that. I think again, gone are the days where people think that that's trading down. I think because it's just not. It's just doing another cuisine, and it's
definitely not. I think if you create something that you're proud of and put your name behind, why is it trading down? I mean, it's like you just said, it's just a different style of cuisine. It's not a different quality.
No, it's just
a different style.
Just more accessible. So
the restaurant that I've got in Edinburgh and the one I'm opening in London will use the same butcher that I'm using for the pies. Yeah. So we're not, flying meat in from Argentina to make a cheap product and put it at a cheap price. We're sticking by, our fundamental beliefs. And
again, anybody that wants a cheaper product can still go Greg's.
Who?
No, but you know what I mean? Again, like it's going to hit a different price point, isn't it? You're not doing that. You're not doing that. You're still doing a quality concept. It's not, So I think. Again, like to tar everything with the same name. Like if you go back to someone like Sat Baines, who's making samosas and sauces, to some people they are very cheap, and to others they are very expensive, and to others they don't care. It's just great food. It's fresh. It's in a nice park because where they serve it out of the van. Yeah. So, but to some people, especially let's say Asians, they'll be thinking, "Bloody hell, he's having it away there, selling I don't know 2 samosas for a tenner. Who does he think he is? Dick Turpin wore a mask, So whereas to other people it'd be like, "Oh, just give me 3 lots. I don't care how much it is." And I think also, people's brands, like you said, you've got to build a brand, and it like with Rick Stein, I know many people that used to go to Cornwall and be like, "Oh, I went to Rick Stein's," and it could have just been the fish and chip shop, but they were buying into the image at a lower price, and I just think that's probably going to be very important moving forward.
I think so, and people need to believe in the brand and believe in the quality to pay whatever that price is going to be, sitting next door to Greg's when they can get a sausage roll for 40 pence. I don't know how much a sausage roll is, but do you know what I mean? It's and I think, and the quality, it does come down to quality as well. I mean, we're not charging those prices because of a name. We're charging the prices because of the quality of.
Yeah, you can't. I think again, and this is the thing with food, isn't it? There's so many variables. You can't just say, "Well, it's a pie." Yeah, because it all ended after the word pie. Or actually before the word pie in this instance. But I think that a lot of people just need to realise that if you are bringing meat from Scotland, and I'm sure it's lovely, it is going to have a premium attached, and actually your brand is a premium brand as well. So don't be shocked if you walk in and it's X amount for a pie and mash. So. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I love the fact that you're sort of stretching out to do something that isn't something that a lot of people would accustom to what you would do, Yeah,
I mean, I could have opened a 40-seater brasserie or a 30-seater Italian restaurant, but this is just a completely different concept. So, and I think it's one that will help future-proof the brand, hopefully.
Do you think employee expectations have been reset a little bit? Because before COVID, finding staff for most concepts in London would have been pretty tricky. Whereas now, with everything that's going on, you might be able to staff this concept with very good people that won't look down on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely. I mean, we got the contract for the Royal Opera House in London last December, just for the staff canteen, and we were looking for 4 chefs. So we put the advert out for 4 chefs, and we got 320 applicants.
Wow!
I helped launch a brand last February in Covent Garden, and we couldn't get chefs. We were advertising for 3 months, couldn't get chefs, so we ended up having to go to chef agencies and pay £18, £22 an hour for chefs, whereas in December we got 320 applicants for 4 positions. I mean, it's crazy. It's just not. When I had my own independent restaurant in Edinburgh, the part-timers would come in and say, "Oh, I can't work in 2 weeks. I'm going to Ibiza," and you'd be going, "No, that's not how holidays work. First you request time off, then we give you the time off, then you book your holiday." "Oh, but I booked it. I'm going." And you had to just say, "Okay, fine. We'll see you when you come back." Because they almost had you over a barrel because the industry was in such short staff that you had to just say, "Okay." Whereas now you can say, no, these are the procedures. And if you want a holiday in a month, you request it. You fill out a holiday request form. We see who else is on holiday. If there's nobody else on holiday, you can get your holiday. Whereas before, they were dictating to us when they would work and when they wouldn't work. But it's terrible that so many people are out of work, obviously. So it's just hopefully we all come back bigger and stronger, which I think we will. Not straight away, but I think we definitely will. There's definitely an appetite from customers to come back. We just need to make sure it's a safe environment for them to do that.
Yeah. I think with Brexit, I think the biggest fears were that a lot of European staff were going to go back and not come back. And actually now I know I'm not devaluing the argument. I just don't think it matters as much as it did. I think now there's just going to be so many staff that want a job that I don't think it actually matters if people go back to their home country and stay for a little longer, see their family. I was chatting to a friend of mine who's got restaurants in Edinburgh, and he said after the first lockdown, a lot of his staff went back to their countries, whether it was mostly Italy, I think, and especially with Italy, who got absolutely like mauled with COVID the first time round. They just wanted to go see their family, and
for sure.
And he said to them, look, if you come back, you come back. If you don't. Obviously, there's no pressure. Mm-hmm. And whereas I think at the time he was a little bit worried. And I think now maybe not so much. I think he's just sort of like, because I think maybe he's seeing the same thing as you. Like there's just an abundance of good people out there that need a job.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to what we were saying earlier. We just don't know how we're going to open back up. So, the 20% or 40% of staff that went back home, do we need them back? Or can we open without them? And and if we can't open without them, then we can advertise, and there's an abundance of amazing staff looking for work. So
it's a positive, but it also is a bit bittersweet, isn't it? Like you say, that there is so many great people on the employment. But
I mean, it's horrible, but it's a thing that the world's never experienced before, and it's nothing you can plan for.
Yeah, I think next time round we'll be ready. If we see the hints coming, I think governments will be ready. Did you manage to reopen and do the Eat Out to Help Out scheme? When your restaurant was open, or
in Edinburgh? I'm trying to think. When was that? August.
Yeah, you weren't still closed, were you?
No, we opened till 6 p.m. I think.
Okay, and is it something
we were open till 6 p.m.
Is it something you'd do again if they did it, or would you not bother?
I mean, I think we're open to doing whatever we need to do, really. So it depends on what the offer is or what the deal is when it comes around. Yeah,
that makes sense.
We'll look at everything, I suppose. And
before I let you go, there's one thing that I wanted to ask you, and it's just reading up on everything that you've been doing. What sort of motivates you to do what you're doing? You're pushing yourself to open multiple sites across Scotland and England. Like, it's not an easy task. I know but you seem pretty motivated. Like, what is it that sort of makes you do that and drives you forward?
I think it's opportunity. I don't think it's anything else. It's just having the opportunity to do it. And it's, as a chef, it's not something, I first came to London 2 years ago to help someone out. And I thought I'd be coming down for a couple of days and then back to Edinburgh again. And then that sort of grew arms and legs, and discussions were had. And I think it's just opportunity, and it's opening yourself up to have those conversations with people that might want to have the conversations with you. And stepping back going, okay, that could work. Because there's a lot of times you say no. And there's been a lot of times in the past I've said no. Whereas this time I've just sort of said yes. I think is the answer. I don't know. I don't know if I'm the right person to ask. I
always find that I love asking those questions to people that think they're not the right people to ask, because actually you get a more humble answer. And I think sometimes when you ask somebody that question and they're like, yeah, I've got that, I can do this, blah, 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 it just ends up being a very weak answer. But I think that is a very strong answer. Opportunity is a really big thing, and there will be a lot of opportunity, in my view, moving forward.
Huge.
Do you think the funding will be available to people if they've got a strong business plan?
So I was speaking to one of my friends in London a couple of weeks ago, and he said that the amount of investment he's seeing in the catering industry is massive. And I said, but why? And he said, because it's a commodity, and when a commodity's low, people invest. And you don't get much lower than closed.
Yes, true.
So this is the time to invest, because rents are cheaper, There's talent out there and it's available that we've never seen before.
Yeah.
The opportunities now against 18 months ago are massive.
Yeah.
And, it will still be tough for the next 12 months. But when tourism comes back, offices are back, if you're sitting with these sites that you maybe had to struggle for 12 months, 16 months, it's going to pay dividends in the end. So I think there's definitely money coming into the sector because the commodity's low, so people buy in.
I think what was interesting that I saw was that the government are doing the super deduction. So if you're buying new capital equipment, you get 130% off your profit. And I thought, well, that's pretty good because that's quite a big tax saving, especially for someone like you now. You're going to be buying ovens, kitchen equipment. So I could see if you then multiply that by almost all restaurants that have been maybe suffering with that old range or that old oven or the old fryer, and you think, you know what, now's the time to spend that money, And
and I think it's going to help. So everything helps. Doesn't matter how you do it.
As Tesco says, every little helps.
I was going to say that, but I better not.
Yeah, you leave the cheesy jokes to me, Mark.
Yeah, I better not.
So, mate, I just want to say thanks for your time today. It's been great. And, have I forgot to ask you anything that's really important?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. Or at least you're just being polite, and I probably haven't.
No, I'll probably walk away and think, no. I should have mentioned that, but it's fine.
Well, look, we can always, when you can spill some more beans on your new project, we'll get you on again. And do you envisage new projects in Edinburgh, or at the moment, is it just your focus is London at the moment?
Again, it's opportunity.
Yeah.
It's, am I having conversations with landlords in Edinburgh? Of course I am.
Yeah.
But does that mean anything's going to happen?
No.
It doesn't mean anything. It just means I'm having conversations. I don't know is the honest answer. I'd love to. So
if a landlord rings you up and says that he's got a great site for you and you want to put a fish and chip business in there, you just call me and we'll make it happen. All right, mate. Well, look, thanks for today. It's been great.
No worries. Great speaking to you. Bye-bye.